So hello, my friends, and welcome to Quartet. We get together like this every 2 weeks to talk about some of the deep kind of issues related to the extraordinary change that's going on the planet today. And I'm joined, as I always am, by my friends, Gregg, Braden. Hello, Gregg. How are you?
John, I am well. I'm coming to you from our studio in Santa Fe. I'm not sure what you've gotten us into here today, but it looks exciting. So I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes. I want to say hello to everyone that's listening that we cannot see from our end.
And Kingsley, Dennis from the UK. Hi, Kingsley.
Hello, John, Gregg, and greetings to everybody. And hello from the United Kingdom. And luckily, I've still got a bit of sunshine here, so hopefully that'll keep me in the picture.
So for those of you who tuned in, we do this every couple of weeks. We get together fortnightly to, like I say, kind of do an in-depth conversation about the amazing kind of change that's going on. We're usually joined by Penny Kelly, who can't make it with us today. But the three of us are going to make a good trio rather than a quartet, I guess. Usually we come from Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, which is the headquarters area for the Arlington Institute, which is the producer of this program. Berkeley Springs is our little resort town just down the road from Washington and Baltimore. But today we're coming from the Energy, Science, and Technology Conference in Spokane, Washington. This is a conference that I go to every summer because it's the leading edge of researchers and scientists and others who are on the kind of the leading edge of carrying on the work of Nikola Tesla and John Bedini and a variety of other kinds of folks. It's always a fun and interesting kind of venue because some of the world's leading kind of experts in terms of alternative energy and other kind of aspects of defining reality show up here at this little meeting in Spokane. And we're happy to have a studio audience with us today to listen in on this episode. So it's time for our topic of today. And last week we got a lot of interesting kind of response from talking about the whole alien life disclosure process and that's going on. It was kind of kicked off and it was become timely based upon the coming forth of a very senior intelligence community manager named David Grush. But it's one thing to have, little guys have been in and out of it somewhere and seen a little piece of it, and I've got a very interesting story, and important stories in some cases to tell. But when you get a guy like Grush who stands up and talked about this, then something's going on. This is really big. And what I'd suggest is that, in the future, there's going to be kind of a before Grush and after Grush kind of assessment of how this all works, because what he has done is really kind of opened the door. We had hoped to get him involved here sooner, but he's going to come and be at Transition Talks with us in December of this year. And so we'll all get a chance to have a lot more conversation with him. Which brings us then to the topic that we want to talk about today. And that is not so much what the implications of this were, which is what we talked about last time, but really what's driving this? Where's this coming from? Why now? Is this just kind of a natural thing that's emerging, or is it being forced and driven by something? Are there downstream events that they know about and that they're freaking out about, and so they're opening the door? We can talk about all of that.
And the question is, is this a natural event? What's coming out? Now, I feel that in order to really address that, we need to really look at what is this alien UFO phenomenon. I think it's far more complex than perhaps a disclosure about, some flying objects being found and some dead bodies and some autopsy and that thing. I think if we look at the whole phenomenon of what is this UFO realm, we may see other kind of angles to it. Now, Jacques Vallée, the well-known UFO investigator, after many years of looking into it, he said there's he can see three sides to it. One is the physical side, one is the psychic side, and one is the deception side. And they're not all autonomous, they're piggyback on each one. So, for example, the physical side, there could be, yes, other intelligences, which is not a surprise at all. And so if they are coming to a point of disclosure, which side is pushing for the disclosure? And which factions? Because there's no unitary kind of consensus here. So we could be seeing a kind of behind the scenes wrangling about which side wants to push for disclosure, and if so, how they want to do it, and therefore, what are they going to gain from this? Because timing is everything. And usually when you release something, there's something to gain from it. Otherwise, why do it? So that's something I think we're going to talk about today. The other side is the psychic side. Now, we know that this phenomena emerges and manifests from nowhere and then disappears again. And so we have to acknowledge that behind this, there's something occult in all levels. Because, of course, the military-industrial complex, which are really behind this, because obviously the major aerospace companies are part of the military-industrial complex, that has deep occult roots. And we know that many people who are behind NASA, I mean, Jack Parsons with the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, he was into invocation. And so now we have these implications that are the UFO phenomenon a physical showing up, we're here, or has something been invoked? Has something been brought into our dimension, either deliberately or, not wanted, not right now? Has a portal been opened? We know that there's a lot of talk around CERN and the portals that potentially could be opening there. Even the top physicists at CERN have been saying that, we could be bringing something through. That's very, significant words. So, if something has been invoked and something has been brought in, then are we able to deal with it? And if not, has a disclosure been brought about as a potential means to, let's say, we've got something here and we need some assistance to deal with it? That's the other issue. And of course, the third issue is any of this phenomenon is not going to be clear cut. There's always going to be some factions making deceptions around it. So we got this debunking on one hand, and then the promoting on the other hand, and they've been going hand in hand for decades through the whole phenomenon. So of course that creates a kind of subliminal contradiction, or deferred closure, which means we don't really know what's going on. Therefore, there's a kind of mass hypnosis or mass suggestion around that. So if we so disclosure isn't just, oh, they're here, I've seen some documents. I think we have to take into account that there's a kind of mass social engineering project around the whole subject.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because for a time they had to defer the subject for mass consciousness, because mass consciousness wasn't in a state for this disclosure. So now if it's being brought out, they have to have the consequences of this mass social engineering on people's response to it. So that may be some reason about how there's been this tiptoeing. How do we deal with this subject when people's consciousness has been closed to it without having a kind of shock? So, maybe that's why Hollywood has been heavily involved in bringing out different ways of responding to these themes, E.T., the friendly one, or the non-friendly one. So there's a lot of issues which I think has cluttered the cultural mind.
None of this is happening in a vacuum. So the disclosure is not happening in a vacuum. And as a systems thinker, when I see things like this happen, the first thing I do is take a big step back and look at the big picture. We know that there is a movement for control, obviously consolidation of control and centralization of control on every level: financial markets, social engineering, religion, certainly medical technology, all of those things. And as we've talked about in this program in the past, there appears to be a countdown that we are looking at right around that 2030 timeline. And what looks like it's happening is that all of the players are jockeying for positions to optimize their positions of power, whether you're talking about central bank digital currencies and centralized banking, or, Kingsley's talking about one world government, or, in any of these things that are happening. So it's within that context that disclosure is happening. My personal feeling is it is not spontaneous. It is not random. It is not an evolutionary process. What's really interesting is it appears that there are, as Kingsley mentioned, different factions that are driving this. One faction that wants to drive it from a benevolent perspective of how the world could benefit from the technologies. And those benefits are obvious. The day that we have the power source that drives a craft across interstellar space is the day that we are no longer burning things for energy. We're no longer using fossil fuels and internal combustion engines. And that can be a beautiful thing for the people of this world on the one hand. On the other hand, the power structures who have gained their power and maintain that power and control through the financial means and the industries, all those would be threatened, and that's the last thing that they want. So when we look at how we are being led to focus on these things, we begin looking at the competing viewpoints. One of them is that the ETs are benevolent, good things can happen. And the other one, and this is really becoming very obvious now, it's being posed as a threat. It's being posed as a threat, and the military is saying, we've got your back. We need more funding. We need all of these things. My personal feeling on this, John, is if there are multiple alien intelligences that we have evidence for, and the ones that have been most obvious are probably the ones we'd least want to interact with. Those are the ones that have traded their technology for human bodies, for human lives, and apparently have violated agreements about intervention and, in our culture and our society. So the very ones that we would most like to have contact with are probably the ones that are least obvious and least apparent right now, and have chosen a path, a more spiritually oriented path, if you want to use that term. The ones that are being made apparent, where we have the craft, we reversed engineered, we're using that technology, they have chosen a path that we are at the crossroads of choosing now. They have chosen a very technologically oriented path, but they lost their biological capabilities in doing that. And we know that from the bodies that have been recovered. Those bodies do not have the complex neural networks. They don't have the neural network in the heart and the brain. They don't have reproductive capabilities. This has all been documented from from the autopsies that were, if they are authentic autopsies that were released. So the ones that we're in contact with have chosen a path in their timeline that we probably don't want in ours. And so both these things are happening at the same time. The third piece of this, 1994, there was discussion about a project called Project Blue Beam. I know you know about it. We haven't talked about it in this forum, where technology will be used to project images into the skies above the major cities of population centers of the earth, to drive people together in unity under one of two scenarios. One could be the appearance of a spiritual being, a return of Christ or whatever. The other one is the sense that we are under an alien threat or under alien attack that's not happening, but it would look like it was from the holographic projections from the satellites into the skies. That was theorized and put forth in 1994, Project Blue Beam. So if we are laying the foundation now for contact, and that contact appears to be a threat, then that is making, it's opening the door to the next step for that threat to become more real. driving people together, all in an effort to position and jockey for power and control over populations before the 2030 event, that whatever that is on the horizon.
What it seems to me is that there is a growing kind of urgency underneath all of this, and across all of the things associated with COVID and all of this stuff, the Great Reset. All of these things have a sense of urgency, and they're all kind of pointing together at some point in the near future, as far as I can tell. And what that makes me wonder, and this, of course, you could roll up into that as well, saying, why are all these things happening right now?
What our indigenous ancestors have always told us, and what experience has shown us, is that in times of uncertainty and in times of extremes, localized living is the best bet to survive and thrive, where we have localized sources of energy. That's what your conference is all about. Localized economy, localized sources of food and commerce, and what we're being driven to through the UN, the World Economic Forum, and so many of the policies that are being adopted is centralized living, centralized finance, centralized corporate farming, taking it away from the farmers. So we're being socially engineered toward the outcome that is least desirable and least successful for the times that we're living in.
Well, and biologically, and every other kind of way as well. Chemtrails, glyphosate, and so on. Yeah, Kingsley.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. John, I mean, I'd like to also frame this with a kind of metaphysical, esoteric perspective to try to broaden this out. I mean, of course, what you mentioned there, Greg, about Uriah Harvell and his one world religion, that ties totally into this one world government, exoteric kind of centralization. But I'm reminded of the 20th century metaphysician René Guénon. And René Guénon actually said that we are approaching the solidification of the times, and meaning that we're going into a mode of hyper materialism at the end of this cycle. And when that happens, he said that this kind of psychic realm starts to crack, like a crack in the cosmic egg. And then what comes in are infrapsychic forces. So when we come to the end of a cycle, this kind of structure starts to break up as a new epoch of let's say, consciousness starts to come in. And so you get other forces coming, other psychic forces, which could be part of this psychic phenomenon, because UFOs could be, as you said, it's a millennial kind of phenomenon. It could be termed with fairies, little folk, jinns, demons.
When we look at social engineering, when you think about it, everything that's happening with disclosure, it's only words, powerful words from powerful people. We have zero physical evidence that's been brought public. It's all based on what people say other people have told them, or what people like Bob Lazar from, back in the 1970s, he was talking about this, what he saw and worked with. We have zero physical evidence. And if the powers that be really wanted to drive this narrative, that would be the most efficient and the quickest way to do that would be to actually share that evidence.
So thanks very much, and thanks for being with us. And let's, for those of you who are our viewers, let me suggest that you visit our website at arlingtoninstitute.org, and particularly transition talks. And if you have questions, please put them in, and we'll be happy to deal with them as we can in the next episodes here. So this is one of a variety of kind of programs that we have at the Arlington Institute, all focused on trying to make sense out of and help to shape this emergent new world. I want to thank Aaron Murakami, who is the impresario of this Energy, Science, and Technology Conference. And we really appreciate Aaron for the chance to come and kind of do our thing here in front of all these good people here in Spokane. And we'll look forward to coming back and being with you all who are viewers in a couple of weeks. So thanks so much. Take care. Bye.